I had a lot of fun making my last list, and I'm going to be doing this more frequently, like maybe 2 or 3 times a year. To be clear though, this isn't exclusive to games that came out this year, but rather the games that I played this year or invested a lot of time into this year. And if you disagree with this list, I think you should go make your own. Hollow Knight is one of those games where you have no idea how big the world is until you've discovered everything. Every time I open this game, I discover more of this massive world. It's dark and it's gray, but it's so beautifully drawn, and somehow it's so absolutely full of life that the gloom isn't even slightly draining. There are these adorable characters throughout the world of Hollow Knight, and just as it starts getting lonely, you find someone friendly who will talk to you a little, maybe sell you something. It's not an easy game, and it gives me a bit of a Dark Souls feel, but it's a fun game, and there is some serious weight behind attacks. Hollow Knight is a challenging, but overall it's a satisfying experience. Something I never do is get mad at games. I can't do it at all. However, like I'll get mad at people online or assholes, but that doesn't count. Something Spelunky has accomplished is making me mad at it. Spelunky is straight up bullshit, but the thing is, it's addictive, fun bullshit. I got the achievement for dying 1,000 times a long time ago, and I still haven't actually beat the game yet. Mainly because I've been trying to find all the secrets and all the achievements. Even though this game only has one goal, there's so much to do, and the game keeps me coming back. I never tire of being tortured by this game, and I probably never will, at least until I get all the achievements, but who knows. I've been playing a lot of spooky games this year, quite frequently on sleepless nights while drunk. Something that makes Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion stand out from other horror games though is how cute it is. Everything is in this adorable cartoon style, and as you take your first steps you feel like it's not going to be so bad. A few rooms later though, the dread starts to creep up on you, and then you meet the first monster and you realize that it's not just a spooky walk through a house. The things you meet throughout the game range from silly to disturbing. You've got the happy mask salesman, you've got the Wendigo, you've got a cute furry, you've got Charlie Brown, the Grudge, and so on. It goes on. And the areas you come across are all perfectly atmospheric. The story behind the game is a deep and dark one for those who care to look for it, but even without it, the game is just a grand old time. So have fun carelessly prancing throughout Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion. I've always loved Supergiant games for their beautiful worlds and their fantastic music and their uniqueness. Ever since their first game, Bastion, and their second game, Transistor, and now this year, I'm putting Transistor on my list. Transistor takes place in a dystopian future setting, and I've never really been a fan of that setting. Usually the people I find are too flat as characters, intentionally of course, but in Transistor you barely have to deal with anyone because everybody's gone. Now isn't that spooky? There are these 4 assholes who exist, but I can't talk about it because I'll spoil everything. My favorite thing about Transistor is how beautiful the world is, and how there's not a whole lot of exposition. You learn so much about the world in what you find along the way and what you read, rather than what you're told. It's the smoothest way to tell a story, and this game does it so well. This game is fucked up. I'm not sure if there's much more to say about it. It's amazing though how well this game blends silliness and seriousness. There's a very dark story behind this game, and for the most part you find yourself hating the character you play as. But in reality there's no good way to approach the situation you're in, and the rest of the world is in it with you. You meet a lot of other characters who cope with what's happened in very different ways. It's surprisingly deep, yet at the same time there's so much clever humor right on the surface of this game, and it manages to balance out so well that it never drains you of your will to push on. What it does well is it makes the jokes and the overall dark comedy of the game good and short. You can experience it, have a good laugh, and then get thrown back into this hell. There is just enough comic relief. It's perfectly balanced. This game is very similar to Hollow Knight, in the way that the worlds are built and the way the combat feels. Every motion you make has just the perfect weight to it, and everywhere you explore is so unique and full of life. It's a game I revisit because I enjoy the look of it. It's a very pretty game, and it's a very cute game. You even get to play as a cat sometimes, and that's honestly probably my favorite part. The enemies you meet are really creative, and they all seem very fair to fight. Where the challenge comes in is facing each boss and trying to do each fight without taking damage for the special items you can get. If you aren't that worried about getting a perfect run though, this game is fantastic. Otherwise, I give you a warning, but I still recommend this game. I've always been drawn to music and rhythm games, but Thumper is something else. Thumper can almost be classified as a horror game, not for its appearance but for its intensity and its soundtrack. This is the single most intense game I've ever played. Like, imagine driving a motorcycle down a street at 400 miles per hour with broken brakes during rush hour and trying not to crash. I'm pretty sure it's the same feeling. On the rare occasion, you do get these little breaks where you just hear this heavy bass and this horn that sounds like it's from the opening of The Shining. It lets you relax for a second while you sit back and admire the world as you speed down this track forever. But then it's over, and you're thrown back into it at full speed. The game is really about keeping in time with the rhythm like most rhythm games are, but it's not so much done like Guitar Hero or like Audio Surf. In Thumper you have one track, and you have one action button, which you have to pair with incredibly precise movements to avoid certain obstacles. It requires a lot of focus, and from experience it's impossible to play while drunk, and it's impossible to play with cold hands. The best way to describe Thumper is a rush. It's an intense, ruthless adrenaline rush. I got this game as a gift for my birthday, and I didn't really know what to expect. The game is short for an $80 game, but it can be played through more than once for sure. One of the things I love most about Prey is how it feels like you progress through the game. The entire story takes place on this one big-ass space station, but the farther you progress, the more dangerous it becomes. In the beginning of the game, you're running around helplessly, hiding and retreating from even the smallest enemies, and the game is scary, and I'll admit some of the parts I got stuck on were pretty frustrating. But by the time you get to the end, you don't exactly feel unstoppable, but you can fight back against some of the much tougher enemies, and it makes you feel like such a badass doing it. But, like I said, some of them. The first time I played this game, I got an achievement for completing the game in the most empathetic way possible, and the best thing is that it doesn't punish you for being kind. My biggest complaint with the game is that the ending is really disappointing if you take the effort to play it the way I did, but I'm not going to say anything about it. Up until mid-November, this game was settled easily at the #1 spot. Night in the Woods is a story. It's a story that is all too common today, of a young adult whose life hasn't been going exactly as planned. It follows May and her group of other friends, and for the most part, the game is about life. It very accurately portrays the difference between the way we act with our friends, our families, our neighbors,
your priest, your rabbi, your minister, your moms, your dads, your teachers,
just about everyone else we live around. While May herself wasn't the most relatable character for me, seeing the world through her eyes let me look at this situation from a second perspective. Oh, but that's an important thing to mention. This is not your story. It's May's. You choose who you learn more about and what you explore and do on certain days, but the control you have over the story itself is very little. This game has a story that it's very intent on telling you. I will be honest, some messed up stuff happens in this game, and not even just the trippy dream sequences you're frequently thrown into. I mean some really messed up stuff that might seem like it's from out of nowhere, because the clues that it does scatter throughout the game don't seem like anything to pay much attention to. For a lot of this game, the gameplay takes a backseat to story, but if you're looking for a story about friendship and camaraderie, it presents you with one of the most realistic depictions I've experienced ever. For a game about life, it's pretty fucked up. But it pulled me into this world, and I cared so much about it. And I had to see it through to the end, and I had to see it end well. But of course, as with life, the conclusion's never simple, it's never straightforward, and it's never black and white, because there's always more than what it shows on the surface. You remember the last game I talked about? Well, look what happens if I move the letters around. Oh, Pyre's a weird game, just in the sense that it's like a combination between Transistor, Sakura Swim Club, NBA, let's go with 2014, and maybe a MOBA. But the thing is, I only like one of those games. Just something about Pyre works. The gameplay is so much a sport game, the story is in the style of a visual novel, and the progression is done by point and click. But you can hate all of those and still love Pyre. Anyone who is familiar with Bastion and Transistor will know that the worlds are beautifully done, and that hasn't changed. Another thing that hasn't changed is that Darren Carve is still making the music, and that is a very good thing. The first bit of the game is adventure-y and even a little dreamy at times, and then wham, it hits you with this sudden shift. This is actually where I was sold with the game. Every opponent has their own music, and it makes them all stand out, but this was an unexpected shock, and I loved it. The characters are so likable, and each of them have their own stories that kind of play out alongside yours. Both allies and enemies are just so deep as characters, and although you want to get to know all of them and help every single one, the sad fact is that you can't. There's a winner and a loser of each right, and no matter what result you get, the game keeps rolling, and you won't please everyone, but god damn it, you'll sure try.